welcome everybody to a latest episode of Health and Safety Unplugged, brought to you by Advanced Safety. And in today's interview, I am joined by Joy Kuhns, who has been just a wonderful friend, really, for the last year and a half, 2 years since we first met.
It has, yes.
And I'm thrilled to be able to introduce you to our audience today. So Joy, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Really lovely to see you. So for those who perhaps may not have heard of you before, Joy, I wanted to give you the opportunity to perhaps introduce yourself.
Thank you. So I'm a New Zealander, and but I spent most of my adult life overseas in Silicon Valley. And I worked for startup companies, really operational, like 2 people. And then we hired staff and we developed policies and procedures. And so I know the real nuts and bolts of running a business. And then for the last 10 years, when I was in California, I worked for a company at NASA Ames Research Center. And I was there when the Space Shuttle Columbia crashed. So it was our scientists who developed the tiles and coatings that go on the shuttle, and so that's directly influenced my approach, I guess, to health and safety and to the way that I think after having read the report and Challenger and knowing how these things happen, not just in big organisations but in small organisations. Yeah.
In I guess the importance of those really minute details and the overall outcome of the projects, right?
And pressures, that's the thing now, is people are under a lot of pressure and things can get missed. And so a lot of it is about an approach, an attitude, an inclusion of the staff, including things like that are really practical, like induction programs. If you hire migrant workers, making sure that the signs are in their language. If you hire a group of migrant workers and know that in their culture it's not okay to speak up, find someone in the group who will. Things like that are really practical. And I guess the big thing for me too is having intervened once with someone who ended up cutting a live wire and being lucky to be alive. And at the outset, doing all the right things as a senior manager, intervening with someone who needed it because they were clearly stressed, they were alone when they weren't allowed to be alone, got someone to help them, checked on them, make sure that they did it, and found out that they then subsequently cut a wire. So no matter what I did, this person is a human being. And so the learning from that became a tracing back of why that person was able to cut a live wire. Well, the reason was because it was hardwired into the building, which should never have happened in the first place. So those are learnings, even if you do all the right things as well. So much of that is practical. Seeing somebody driving something too fast and just stopping them, things like that. Not saying, well, I'm on a board or I'm a senior manager, it's not my job, it belongs to health and safety, it belongs to everyone. Just really it comes down to human behaviour. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, gosh, what a fantastic intro, and there's a lot for us to unpack in amongst all of that. And then also perhaps in more recent times, you've launched your new consulting business?
Yes, I have. So I'm absolutely passionate about leaders and leader development because I think it's just so lonely. It's lonely. There's a lot of expectations around that. You're to be optimistic, yet you have to manage the numbers, you have supply chain issues or whatever the issues are. There's pressure from the board. It is a lonely business, and so you need the tools to be able to, and the support to be able to manage that in a confidential way. And also for the staff as a team to develop the skills and to have common language and be supported as well, because oftentimes the more junior leaders, the new and emerging leaders, they've come up through a technical role and they're not equipped from a leadership point of view. They're still doing the operational part and not realizing actually you need to push that out to your staff. And so in that You're able to see things and see connections and make sure they're safe.
Yeah, and that's probably a really nice segue into my first question, I suppose, is around how we align the overall strategy of an organization, and how that then leads to the things such as the health and safety performance and outcomes of those organizations.
Yes.
So from your approach, from your experience, how can, for our audience, who many of which are in the health and safety space, what are some of the learnings or some of the key points that you can offer in terms of strategy, aligning to culture, aligning to health and safety outcomes?
Well, there's a few things that I use in kind of a toolkit, if you will, and no matter what discipline you're in, and say it's project management and you're using the philosophy of Prince 2 or you're using PMBOK, all of those aspects are interconnected. And if you change one thing, so it's not just about the strategy, so it's fine to have the strategy, it's about the implementation. I'm on a board and I run the strategy sessions. Our strategy is just over a page, that end. Keep it simple, and it's about having a culture where people report things. It's having a person to talk to if they're worried about something. It's filing the right forms. It's taking the action. It's modeling the behavior. And so one of the things about that I really love is I heard a chairman say recently that what they do is at the board table, each meeting, someone different has to address risk in the organisation. So that's perfect. I thought that was perfect. It's simple. It means, okay, so health and safety is a department. Health and safety is that person. Doesn't belong to us. No, it actually belongs to everyone. And so that's a very simple way. And then just calling out behaviour. But the other thing is hiring for diversity. So I really like you, Matt. I do. And we're aligned, right?
Yes.
So that means if I interviewed you and you had the right technical skills, I would hire you. Now, that may be a good thing or not, because it's actually through diversity that we can look at things in a different way, through vigorous technical debate that isn't personal. And the way that I look at that is this model called Herman Wholebrain. So it's basically there's big thinkers, they're innovators. They're the people that change the world. So if you put a big thinker with someone who's thinking about risk, who's talking about planning, they might go, no, I actually don't want to do that. This person's so negative, or you can make these decisions. And just the same as from an interpersonal side, you can go, it's all about the people. Well, it's about the people, but you better watch the sick leave balances. You better think about the numbers and whether you're over-hiring or under-hiring. And so if you can have a common language about that, and if you can have the conversations with those who think differently, you not only have great outcomes and you're much more likely to solve health and safety issues, but it's quicker. Because we all think in a certain way naturally. We can do the other things, but we have trip hazards. We all have trip hazards, blind spots. And you're suddenly, through trust and the building of trust, you can navigate those blind spots, right?
Yes, yeah. You're speaking to I actually see it as the emerging new leader of today, which is, I see, is someone who is prepared to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Who taps into the emotional intelligence skills.
Yes.
As a side note, emotional intelligence, is that something you see is hardwired and you've either got it or you don't?
No, I don't. That people used to think that way, but these are skills that can be developed. So whether you're new and emerging or whether you're a senior leader, and when I talked about that loneliness, you have to be almost superhuman, because self-management, management of others, knowing the emotion of others, having integrity, honouring your promises, being a leader that inspires, that's a hard ask. And it certainly is for new and emerging leaders, but it also is for senior leaders. And so being able to take a pulse on what does that look like now, not just to me, but actually how do my staff view it, how do the people I report to view it, and then develop those skills through coaching. And interventions really do work. It isn't a quick fix.
Yeah. And so thinking about the business leaders, and perhaps after listening to how you've just described the importance of having a neurodiverse group around the executive leadership table or around the board table,
yes,
what are some of the steps, or what are some of the things that they should be considering if they're looking around the table and realizing that they're actually just speaking to mini versions of themselves?
Yes.
What can they do about that?
They can bring in people. They can have agendas that address the other aspects. So one thing, if they don't want to actually replace out the board or the senior leaders, that's a very easy way to do it, is what parts are we considering and who knows about that? And it doesn't have to be that they sit there, but somehow they influence there. That's a very easy thing to do. And to have the staff be involved, or have, to find out more about what's going on. And also for those board members, and I know you've brought this up in previous videos, is to have them walk the floor, find out for themselves, and just be open. So that whole thing about communication and really listening is really important.
I love it. It's so very timely, I think, but also very much in alignment with what a lot of the health and safety practitioners that I speak to on a regular basis are all about, in terms of active participation, engagement, developing open and transparent cultures. Often words we hear, but not always sure as how to approach that. So thank you for sharing that, because that's actionable, pragmatic advice, right? So I guess that boils down to the importance of keeping it simple. Keeping it simple.
So the staff understand and being really clear about what you want. No injuries. I mean, I don't have to tell you about the death rates and in New Zealand. That's just How can you not be impacted by that in your profession? And so it takes so little actions can have big results. Especially modelling behaviour too.
Thanks for saying that. I think there's a lot of soul searching going on within the industry for obvious reasons, and I think at the moment, when we're looking at things in the headlines, reading the latest reports, it's all pretty damning, and I think within the industry as individuals, there's probably a sense of isolation. There's probably a sense of, gosh, I'm only one person, how can I make an impact? So again, thanks for saying that and reminding us that some of the biggest leaders and changes in human history have been those individuals who probably felt like that.
Yes, that's right. And I think the legislation was meant, I watched that play out, the new legislation, and it was meant to change things. And so it must be very disheartening that it hasn't necessarily changed things. And, that WorkSafe isn't equipped, from a resource standpoint and that kind of thing, whereas the health and safety practitioners are dealing with the reality of that and trying to influence themselves, which is why that whole soft skill development is really important for them, as well as for those who lead.
Thank you. And to take that one step further, so for those who are looking to develop emotional skills, change management skills perhaps, what are some of the top tips that you could perhaps share to help them on that journey?
Well, so the first is find a mentor, get formal training or assessment of the formal tools because that's a real grounding opportunity. If you don't invest in that, there are a number of courses free online. It's very easy to get that. The only thing is, if you do those, you may not get the support. So a lot of it is not just I've taken this course, but it's actually I'm dealing with the day-to-day reality of my work, and I need the support. So find support.
That's brilliant advice. for myself personally, I have about 2 or 3 ongoing informal coaches that I turn to,
Yes.
and I include you in that fray, Joy, for obvious reasons, because I think it is critically important, no matter where you are in your journey, whether you're at the beginning or at the very pinnacle of your industry.
Yes.
You need those additional eyes and ears, and the people that have got the ideas and the experience who can point you in the direction when you're having those moments of doubt. So,
well, it's really interesting because when I left New Zealand, I was seeking opportunity. So for the longest time, I just did things myself. I went to night school for a long time, to get my bachelor, master's, just gritted it out, right? Worked very hard. But even in that, I had mentors. And I'd say since coming home, I've been much more open to actually, I might have these credentials, but I actually don't know how to do this or that. And there are people who do. And it's amazing. In just the same way as I talked about diversity of thought, it's the same kind of thing. Like you end up getting stuck and you go, how come I didn't actually see that? Or, oh, that's so basic, right? In a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. I don't know, I mean, you might be able to add to this. From my own assessment, I sense that over the last little while, it has become more normalized to access resources, information, training outside of the traditional institutes and traditional ways of doing things.
There are all sorts of resources available online for people. So the thing is, they may not know which resources they actually need. And that whole idea, especially if you're young and emerging leaders, that whole idea of courage and you actually need to step out and you need to address issues. And it's interesting, I've found in business, one of the challenging things is to convince people to remember about their staff and to invest. In the health system, surprisingly, I've found the opposite. These wonderful, dedicated people, and then it has to be about metrics, about backlogs, and about so learning what you need through an outside influence. It still takes a person. You can do the training, but it's actually people who can make the difference. Whether it's just bouncing an idea off, or have colleagues, have mentors, do those things that will help bridge the gap to, well, you might want to consider ... right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the application. I've just recently got back into attending workshop training. I shied away for it for a little while. I was head down, just being busy, being busy, and getting back into it now. And one of the takeaways I have is that my sense is that many people who participate in those trainings, it's a flash in the pan moment. They're there for the day. They take some notes, get some ideas, get some inspiration, but then back to the coalface the next day and forget about those improvement actions or ideas. It's something that's taken me a long time to understand, is that during those moments is making a note of those improvement actions and actually putting them into a calendar, setting some dates and actions around it after the training. And I guess that also comes back to the importance of having mentors and people behind the scenes to keep you accountable and on track.
And sometimes that can be someone in your class, because that's the other thing that can be really effective, is to have a pulse at the end of that, like X period of time after the course, how's it going, that kind of thing. So actually creating allies within the class itself, because otherwise you'll go and there might be one thing you take away and do, or something impactful, and that's amazing. But it may not be enough. It's only the start, right? So these things happen over time.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great piece of advice, actually. So perhaps for anyone who's scheduled to attend some workshop training in the near future, is buddying up with someone else who is part of that training session, and then touching base with them maybe 12 weeks after that time, just to see how things are tracking, if there's been any lessons learned or any wins.
And taking their phone number, feel free to give them a call. They've probably experienced the very same thing or had the same roadblock. You might be disheartened. Pick up the phone.
Yeah, that's so good.
Or a text. Some people don't like calling now, do they? Can I call you? And I'm going, what just happened that you have to ask people if it's okay to call?
Yeah, that is very interesting, actually. Yeah, I've become a bit more native towards texting these days, I have to admit. But yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so bringing it back to emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Now, you use something called the GENOS Emotional Intelligence Assessment tool.
Yes.
So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So it requires an assessment, right? And so the assessment isn't static. The assessment is a window in time. So you can take the assessment yourself, or you can do 180 degree, i.e. people who report to you or your manager, or you could do 360 degrees. So that is an assessment of where you are within different categories, right? So, understanding of self-management, having integrity, honouring your promises, being inspirational, noticing the emotions of others. So the beauty of it is that you are able to assess the level of importance of that to you in your organisation at this time, and then where you see you are in that journey. And so there's a gap. Then if you measure that with people who report to you, or someone who you report to, or a 360, there can be a difference in the level of importance, and you go, "Wow, I actually have a problem here around that." And there can also be a gap in your understanding of where you are versus how others perceive you. And so that becomes a growth opportunity to develop skills, because that's quite easy. So you just take those numbers and you go, "This is today." And what we're going to do is what areas would you like to focus on? So even if this gap is stronger in one area, but at that time you needed another area, let's focus on that. And let's not just focus on that, but let's focus on it as to how it impacts you in your role, because that's where it matters, right? Yeah. And then you can take a pulse after that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love that.
At a certain window, because change, it depends on what you want, but some change can take a while.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think the one thing I really like about that approach is that it's not static. It's a forever moving beast, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, I'm not a fan of psychometric tests that say you are that, because I know how I've developed over time, and I also what's interesting is, as a manager and then becoming a senior manager, you develop skills, and maybe those skills are in, for me personally, they're in facts and in making sure that the people alignment is aligned to the facts, because that's not the most natural thing for me. But what I've realised is, over time, as a small business owner, I've developed entrepreneurial skills, and because you actually can't say, "I don't do well at that," actually, you have to do well at that, right? Yeah. So it's the same kind of thing. So yes, and I must say, I taught at ARA when I came back, and I've taught thousands of students, adults, and I would say there's less than a handful who can't develop skills in all that time that I was there. Yeah,
that's so good. I suspect there'll be many who are viewing or listening to this that could probably resonate with this concept. Many moons ago, I undertook the Myers-Briggs test as part of an organizational-wide initiative. My results were that I was significantly introverted, and for one reason or another, the assessment results were then used to almost, publicly define us within the group, within the organization. It's like, "Oh, don't worry, it's all right, Matt, we know you're an introvert," kind of thing. One that's so disheartening, discouraging.
And it can totally affect your career.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's kind of how it felt. I'd been pigeonholed. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, well, we'll take care of that, because you're an introvert. You clearly can't be the leader that we're looking for in your role. Oh my
word, that's so remarkable. Yeah. So I ran this really large proposal, and I ran it because the managers were really busy, and they said, "Would you run it?" And I presented this proposal in the Gold Room of NASA Ames Research Centre. It was a big moment. Yeah. And what happened is, I ran a session, and I had 3 marketing people, and the rest were senior research scientists, a room full of people.
Yeah.
Guess who talked? It was the marketing people who talked, right?
Right, yeah.
So at the end of it, I thought, oh my goodness, that was a disaster. But then I thought, hang on a minute. It's because research scientists go away and have a think. All I need to do is give them a chance to have a think. So I filled the room with butcher paper with these ideas, and I went to each of those participants and said, you have 24 hours, and after that, after 24 hours, the room was full of ideas.
Amazing.
So that's the misinterpretation of introverts. Introverts aren't necessarily quiet. More introverted people may just need some time to process. Would you say to a senior research scientist that they're not effective leaders in their field? I don't think you would.
That's right. Yeah, and it's that level of awareness and that level of critical thinking, which I just think is so important in today's world.
Yes.
Where everything is instant. We need results now. It's like, well, hold on, that only really applies to perhaps a quarter, if that, of the people in this room right now.
Yes.
We need to also take into account how everyone else thinks, digests information, and then comes out with ideas and solutions.
Well, and I've always heard this idea that you can say, can I come back to you at X period of time? If the timing doesn't work, if you say 24 hours and they say, I need it today, that's fine. Go and take a walk and have a think about it. So just for those who are on the more introverted side, that's just an easy fix to that. And for those who are leading that, put that into your schedule.
This is kind of bringing me back to, I recall hearing the story that, I think it was Nelson Mandela's father, tribal leader, during tribal meetings, his approach, and I think Nelson Mandela eventually took the same approach, was that the elders around the table each took a turn to present their latest piece to the chief. And it was only once the final person among that table had said their piece that the chief, Nelson Mandela's father, would then speak. And so it was giving each the opportunity to say their piece, for him to digest that information, rather than, which I think is probably the Western approach, which is the expectation, is as the leader, you are there to speak and to provide all the ideas and solutions on the front end, which for a number of reasons, it's perhaps the wrong way of doing it, but certainly, as to your point, is by being the first person to speak and putting it back to the others around the table, they then instantly have to come up with the response. And that's perhaps not actually taking into account everyone's different styles of communication and thinking.
Yes. And even things like sending an agenda out ahead of time so that people have a chance, have a think about this. So if you're planning a meeting, maybe you plan it just as you walk in the door, but if you're planning something that is important, especially, we talked about projects and running projects, and generally speaking, as you know, projects are way underfunded, and the timing, I think the metrics at one point were, I don't know, 75% underfunded, and the timing was off and all of that because of the pressure at the outset to compete. So taking the time to allow people to have a think about the various components of that and how it affects them when you are faced with changes that you can't afford to keep the original scope, right? So all of that, but back to very basics. Keep it simple, communicate effectively, listen well. I think that's one of the biggest things that leaders can learn, is to listen.
Yes. It's the whole saying you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. It should be that ratio, right?
Yes. That's right.
I do too. I do too. That's stuck. It's that whole keeping it simple, right? And I guess further to that point, so if we're thinking about emerging health and safety leaders who want to establish a long-lasting culture of health and safety being a priority and health and safety outcomes, what are some of the top attributes, including some that you've just listed, that you would define or put up on the shelf as being some of the most desirable attributes, do you think?
I think that connection with emotions and being able to influence and knowing what is important to whoever it is that you're working with, and developing communication skills. Those two things are how you influence, and being willing to get stuck in as well. I mean, you have to prove that you know what you're doing technically. You can't do anything without actually having the right tools and, or, saying people need audits and processes and things like that, but it's really that ability to influence, because you won't be effective if you don't learn that.
Attention project management and construction business owners and health and safety professionals. Are you seeking expert guidance to streamline your health and safety processes? Look no further than Advanced Safety, New Zealand's leading health and safety consultancy. Our team specialises in comprehensive capability assessments, tailored systems, exceptional training and ongoing support. We're here to simplify your journey, ensuring you achieve demonstrable legal compliance efficiently. And here's the best part. With Advanced Safety, you're guaranteed results. We commit to achieving compliance within 180 days or less, providing you with peace of mind and saving you valuable time and resources. Say farewell to intricate procedures and welcome simplicity. Our experts excel at simplifying health and safety, empowering you to focus on your core business operations. To explore our franchise opportunities for health and safety professionals and our comprehensive suite of solutions for construction and project management companies, visit advancedsafety.co.nz today. Advanced Safety, simplifying health and safety for New Zealand businesses. You've just got me thinking about, I've seen this time and time again when I do audits and assessments of companies' health and safety capabilities, where I can see one or two individuals within those organisations who they stick to the checklists and the way it must be done to the nth degree, to the point where it's almost like they're kind of stuck or extremely rigid in their approach. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about this. From my perspective, sometimes that can indicate that the individuals behind those checklists perhaps lack the confidence or the experience level to be able to have a greater degree of flexibility or interpretation of what those mean.
Yes, and that's the very thing that can really turn people off. And I know one time I coached a woman, and she had an attitude like that, and it really turned the staff off. And so through the coaching process, the communication style was softened. And so it's that ability to be open, and that work is really powerful. And because it takes such courage for someone to be willing to look at that. I think a person like that needs someone that they model, and where someone in their organisation has made a difference. And so that comes down to who is managing them and providing them with that. And whether it's the manager or another colleague across, I think that's kind of the work that needs to be done, because that ability to see the big picture as well. So what you've described is really transactional, and that's not where things change.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I was hoping you might go down that road, because that's often my sense in it as well. So,
but one without the other, you can't do one without the other. You have to have a foundation. That whole Maslow of, people need to feel safe. They have to know that you'll deliver, you'll be accountable, all of those things. So you have to have those systems in place, but then you have to stand back. But if you haven't been trained in that way, what you've described is a very technical approach, and change in health and safety and change in people and in leadership happens above that.
Yes.
So it's I guess the difference between management and efficiency and transformation.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for mentioning Maslow and how you just described that. It's perfect, because you're right, it's almost technocrat systems here. And of course you need that as a foundation.
Yes.
But in order to then be able to adapt and to transform, you've got to then get into the personal development, emotional intelligence, leadership attributes that we've described.
Yes.
That's so good. So if we flipped it, so imagine I'm a business leader, and as part of my team, I've got a health and safety manager who reports to me, and they have that technocratic style of approach. What are some of the things that as a leader I could consider to help develop or train that person to be much more?
So a lot of times people think of providing resources as in a thing and costing money. It actually doesn't cost money to do that. So if you're having a meeting with that employee, all you have to do is have a conversation and support the soft side. So there's hard skills and soft skills. So support the soft skills and make it part of the performance conversations. And not in a punitive way, but in a supportive way. Find them someone they can model to, because there's bound to be someone in the organisation. Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's too hard for you in that relationship. But find them someone. Find someone who's doing that really well, and have them set up some meetings. Don't do it yourself. Inspire them to do it. You be the inspiration. You don't have to deliver more. You'll find that the outcome of that will be quite remarkable.
Yay. I love that as well, because you've kind of moved us away from the traditional response, which would be, we'll just stick them on some training courses or another half-day workshop and hope that something sticks.
Well, it's interesting because some of those programs need numbers. What can happen, especially if you've been in a technical role and you're stepping into leadership, you have to be able to interpret numbers. And you go, I didn't do well at maths. I don't know accounting. Well, actually, you need to know what the numbers mean. Has your sick leave gone up? Is that an indicator the staff are overworked? Is there a problem in the culture of your organisation? What do the metrics look like? Have that person sit with the accountant and have them explain some basic things. Have reporting be part of their role. So all of that. So it's the soft skills, but it's also the training of what's important, because they haven't learned that.
Yeah.
And a lot of those new leaders may not know that they actually know. They know how to run their money, hopefully, or maybe they don't. But that's the kind of support that you can offer, and they'll be the people that will move through your organisation and be great role models themselves. I mean, that's why I'm passionate about it myself. I came from a humble background, and I just had so many people who inspired me, and that's why I do this work, right?
Yeah, it's so neat, and a neat way for me to be able to ask if we could step back in time a little bit to perhaps some of your experiences in your time in Silicon Valley. Are there any stories that spring to mind based on some of the things that we've talked about so far?
Well, the Space Shuttle Columbia is probably the most, for me, it changed the way that I think about behaviour and influences. And on the surface, and certainly going to, a locked gate every morning with camera crews and wreaths at the gate, 3 months of that. It was like going to a funeral for 3 months. So that has a significant impact, right? And so given that it was our scientists who developed the tiles and coatings on the shuttle, and given that the news stories were about these brittle tiles, well, the tile structure was known, so that wasn't new. Turned out that the foam hit in the worst possible place upon re-entry. Now, what happened is, after investigation and knowing the impact of the people who work there, people are absolutely passionate about their job, feeling this every day, and realising that it wasn't about the tiles, it was about something. There's this thing by Diane Vaughan. She talks about normalization of deviance, and it took a while to figure out what had physically happened, which was that the foam hit the external tank, and then this was upon re-entry, basically, it exploded. But so what happened is that's a deviation from the original SOP, and thou shalt not deviate from the SOP. But sociologically, that was normalised in the culture because a piece of foam came off every time. That was a known phenomena, right? And so, no, it's fine, it's actually fine. So people saying it's not fine, the managers are going, no, it's fine. And it wasn't that they didn't care, it was that they thought it was fine. Communication pathways where messages weren't getting through. People, and this is in the report, anyone's welcome to see the Columbia Executive Report, where requests from the Air Force to get the photos, you don't need the photos. We do need the photos. No, you don't need them, this isn't a problem. Change in org structure where the change was faster, better, cheaper, right? Program office holding the Health and Safety Office, Program Office responsible for time and cost, Program Office for Health and Safety.
Yeah, conflict of interest,
conflict of interest, right? Needing a separation of duties. And so all of that tells a story, pressure from political pressure to launch, series of delays, all of those things. And then it's those human things and those practical changes that have a downstream effect. Reading the report and giving presentations around this, and it was always very sobering to me because I thought, okay, so at least they couldn't get back, so there was no way to rescue them. But it turned out in the report there were some recommendations around that. So this was all very, very sobering to me. But one day, so as a result of the investigation, some things changed. So what happened is that there were cameras put all around the shuttle. So every time the shuttle was launched, these images were processed through the supercomputer. There was a gap filler. Now, I am not a technical expert, but I know enough to say, here's a tile in between the size of the thinness of a piece of paper sticking out just a little bit out of a tile. That image comes back. Is this a problem? Now you would think, no, that's not a problem. They determined it was a problem because of the changes that happened because of Columbia. So there was a spacewalk. So a couple of our scientists went back and were part of that team, and there was a spacewalk, and they literally pulled the piece of gap filler out. And I was in that conference room when Discovery landed.
Wow.
That, I'll never forget that. So out of incredible, just heart-wrenching tragedy, if you can do the learnings, you know, there were a number of things that they didn't learn, but for that, you can just breathe again.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Gosh, thank you for sharing that. It's such a story. Just as you were describing how the normalization of deviance is something, it just sprung to mind was the alarm systems at Pike River, like how they had all been disarmed because it just become normal. You know, they got so used to hearing the alarms going off that it was easier just to switch them off.
Yes. Well, and it's the same kind of thing too. If someone reports something and they report it, well, there's no point because no one ever does anything. Right? It's the same kind of thing.
The beauty of hindsight.
I
guess it's the importance of kind of going right back to the whole, you do need to have that system and that structured approach to your assessments and auditing, no doubt. But you also need to have that healthy level of emotional intelligence and the ability to communicate concerns and also identify opportunities for improvement as well. Without the healthy mix, you kind of stuck in this really vicious cycle in a way. And there's a quote, if you don't mind, I'd like to read it. I'm pretty sure I have it over here. This is what it said in the report. Despite the best intentions, managers, engineers, safety professionals and other employees, when confronted
with extraordinary demands act in counterproductive ways.
Yeah. Yep.
And that is the reality of a lot of businesses now, with having to do more for less, with less.
Yes. I think instantly I'm thinking of WorkSafe as the regulator. So new legislation, no case law to really rely on or to use as a benchmark. And then at the same time, the scope has just exponentially grown. All of a sudden they're now having to deal with psychosocial issues in the workplace.
Yes.
They're not designed to deal with that.
No, just like they weren't. I had the WorkSafe, the local WorkSafe person come out when the new legislation was coming into force, and I asked about bullying, and it was the same. It's like it's in the legislation, but we don't have the power to enforce it because we just don't have the resources.
Yeah, exactly the same message was given to us in some public forums on the same topic a couple of years ago. I was shocked, but not surprised, really. It's the reality, isn't it? It's, you got, arguably, it's scope creep. And without the resource and infrastructure to support that, what can you do?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, awful stuff. Okay, so for the emerging or established leaders in business, in health and safety, given your experience and some of the topics that we've discussed so far, what if we were to summarize it all in a nutshell, what are some of the top tips and some of the top advice that you would give someone who's looking to explore and expand on their current capabilities?
Invest in soft skills. There's a report from the World Economic Forum of the 10 top skills needed today and in the future, 7 of them are soft. So investing in those, being able to communicate and influence, and finding the right support, that's what I'd recommend. And there is another report, just one minute, I just have to look over here. Also be willing to adjust. I mean, I lived through the computer revolution and the internet revolution in the Valley, and that whole idea of agility and things like their disability support within health and safety. AI has the potential to do voice for people who have struggle with sight, and if you start to employ people, starting to employ people who are disabled, think through the health and safety implications of that. Think about the psychosocial aspects of people working from home and being disconnected from learning. When you do health and safety training, what about the people who are working from home, and are they really paying attention, and is there something to check whether they really understood what you're saying, and consider the 24/7 aspect of what we're doing now and the impact on the staff, and have the organisation consider things like sick leave and how the staff are doing. Those kinds of things become health and safety concerns. And the one that I'm just waiting to see a spike in is ergonomics. So basic. Who actually goes out and makes sure that those people working at home have their desks set up right, and that they're not hunched over, and that they're taking breaks and all of those kinds of things. So let me just check to see if I've missed anything. The other thing, in terms of this report from the NIH that they're talking about in Europe, is hazards of privacy and ethics. Now, that seems so soft. Like, how can that hit health and safety? It absolutely hits health and safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you think it through, like the unintended or otherwise release of private information among the organisation can be extremely painful for those at the pointy end of that. And then hence you then move into psychosocial harm or potential psychosocial harm, and the management of that. There's just so many facets to it. It's again, it's the whole scope creep of what our role is. You just reminded me, actually, I just I attended some recent training with Nipin Anand. Nipin is now based in, I believe it's Aberdeen in Scotland. He came over for a couple of weeks to speak to the health and safety community about a different way of looking at health and safety, bringing in emotional intelligence, looking at culture, and how do we even define what culture is in the workplace. It was very deep in theory, in philosophy, actually. I've got a background in philosophy, so it definitely resonated with me. But during the training, I asked Nipin the question, what is our role? Because so far you've told us that the mechanics of health and safety, the systems, the policies, the processes, the standard operating procedures, all of that stuff is at the base level of safety. Then we're talking about engagement and communication. Then we're talking about culture. Where do we fit in all of this?
Yes.
And it caused him to pause and reflect. And eventually he came back to say the role of the health and safety advisor, coordinator, manager is to challenge the director and the CEO.
Yes.
To encourage open dialogue with them,
yes.
and to get them to think.
Yes.
For me, I was just like, bingo, that's exactly what our role is. With the rise of AI and technology, the rise of automation and systems that will pretty much take care of a lot of that day-to-day stuff, it then leaves us hopefully the breadth of room to have those engaging conversations. And to bring a bit of humanity back to the equation.
At one point in my career, I was an HR manager, and I was asked to manage the health and safety function, and I said no. And the reason I said no is because that function was reporting to the directors, and I didn't want to be that gatekeeper.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a great response.
Yeah.
There's been an ongoing debate for an age around whether HR and H&S should be kept apart. Personally, I believe it absolutely should be.
Yeah.
For one of the key reasons being it becomes a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And that you start to see these glowing sunshine reports coming through from the H&S team because they have been led to believe, based on feedback given to them, that that's what the leadership want to hear and see. They don't want to hear about the negative stuff because everyone's too busy.
Yes.
I absolutely love that.
Well, and for health and safety professionals who are actually starting out in their career, they may feel that they can't do that, that they can't influence the directors. So find the person who can. So that's because there's potentially a lack of confidence. There may be a reality to that politically.
Yes.
So find the person who will influence it. And the one organisation that I admire has this philosophy coming from the directors of taking care of your mates. And taking care of your mates means calling out behaviour. That means filing that report when you find something that has the potential to do something. That all comes from senior management and director level.
That's brilliant. The language is simple. It resonates because it's familiar, right? It gets right to the core of the why.
Yes.
Why should I care? It's because it's your friend, it's your neighbour, it's the person you see day in, day out.
I love it, and I've seen it in action, and it works.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I recently read an article about how dangerous it is to be using words like family within organisations because it kind of blurs the lines and makes things a little bit ick. Whereas the term mate, that's
I love it.
Such a powerful word.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah, so good. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Joy, for those who have been listening or watching this interview, how can they reach out to you? Because I'm sure there'll be many people listening right now thinking, gosh, I need a Joy in my life.
Excellent. So my email is joy@exl.nz. I have a website, exl.nz, and my phone number is 021 077 3938. And I'd love to hear from you. I really would. I just love this work, and I know what a difference it's made in my life, and I'd love to help others.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joy. So Joy provides workshop facilitation for work groups, for organisations, private mentoring and coaching. I just can't recommend Joy's services enough, so please get in touch with Joy. So Joy, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been a real privilege. Thank you, Matt.
Really insightful. So wonderful stuff. Thank you.
I'll talk to you later. Thanks.